Conscious collaboration brings together entrepreneurs, changemakers, and thought leaders. We aim to highlight the people that embody the idea of aligned mind, body, and business. Each week, we share, discuss, and learn from the various experiences and ideas of our guest experts. Through our discovery, we find a path to an aligned mind, body, and business.
What up, guys? This is Emily.
And I'm Lisa, and we are the Conscious Collaboration. And here with us today is Vinny Tafuro. Welcome, Vinny. Vinny is one of my new dear friends that I met through a business cohort. And it was actually my graduation evening that I met Vinny. And I learned of something I've never heard of before, said in this way. But Vinny works and has developed a very unique system that I had the opportunity to experience. It's called Futures, plural, Futures Planning. And Vinny, we're so happy to have you here today. If you want to add a little bit more on your background, because it's so vast.
Thank you, Lisa, Emily. I appreciate being here. And yes, you have become a dear friend. And I appreciate the opportunity to be here and share this. I recently finished a graduate program that I entered due to the work I'm doing in the field of economics and changing that kind of how we look at economic systems. And towards the end of the program, which was on foresight and future studies, I discovered a segment of the field that is focused on personal futures. That was developed by one of our university alum about a dozen or so years ago, and have started delving into that and working with individuals to help them strategically plan their next decade or more or less, depending on where they are in their life stages.
How does that make you feel, Emily? Planning out a decade. Can you imagine?
I know it's wild. And is this from a strictly financial perspective, or do you take a more holistic approach?
Holistic. It is.
Awesome.
We look at life domains. So one of the parts of the sessions is going through your domains, whether it's work and finance, hobbies and activities, your social and family life, your housing situation and mobility, and then overlap that with whatever life stage you're in, whether you're a young adult, middle age, independent, elder, and kind of doing all those things. So really depending on what life domains come up in the session as needing work that you want to expand on, those are the ones that we usually select like 2 or 3 of those to really focus on. Say if health is a thing you want to get on track and finances are not, we'll talk a lot more about health than we will the finances.
That's interesting. As you talk too, and I had the opportunity to experience your work and your sessions, but these different domains and these priorities or focuses in your life, they do seem to be very related. I'm wondering, Vinny, are you tending to attract in people of a certain type to your work?
It's been a mix of employed and self-employed. So I think I'm still kind of figuring out where there's niches. I'm looking at young adults that are a little overwhelmed by the years ahead and the pressures of family might have on them of this is what you should do as opposed to what you want to do. And then a number of people, I'm 48 and quite a few have been, the early friends and family that you reach out for and you do these. And those referrals are, middle-aged Gen Xers that are going, okay, I'm 12, 13 years away from 60. My kids are about out of the house now and things like that. Like this is a big life change. And what do you want that to look like? So it's been a mix of kind of different people as I go. And I think there's ways of tailoring different versions of this to different populations as well. And fortunately, being in my middle age now, I have some life experience to look at different things a different way and bring that kind of insight to people.
Yeah, I like the way you say that, especially in terms of the timeline that I may be on versus a young adult that's, just entering or just exiting college. The timelines are different and the pressures are different. But I love that you're really attracting in a lot of that, the younger clientele, because I think it Emily and I talk a lot about nonconformity, and the systems and structures that exist today, they really need to shift at some point. And I'm hoping that this younger generation will make that happen, because as we think about time, and you said yourself, how did you phrase it? The economy of time?
In looking at how we spend our time going forward,
Yeah.
we I use, I lived in Tampa by Ybor City, and the cigar workers used to work 8 hours a day. They walked to work, they had a lunch break, they came home at the end of the day. We have sacrificed every part of our day except for that 8 hour workday, and now so many professionals work far more than 8 hours. Um,
Mhm.
Yet we have people that don't have work and things like that. So like how do we start living a more natural cadence to our lives? Has
Yeah,
been
it
a big
feels
interest.
very like out of sync. I mean, especially, and Emily and I are both mothers. It feels like, being mothers and business owners, and I know this applies to anybody, whether you're a parent or not, but I'm just looking at our lives in particular, is that, the expectations of what needs to be fulfilled in a day, or how things are set up. It's like what our primal instincts and our desire, rhythm, and flow of life, it does not marry up with the systems and the structures that currently exist necessarily. So that means that, what we're trying to budget in our day in terms of what we're trying to get done might not be the best or the healthiest for our lifestyle. And it might not be contributing effectively towards pushing the needle forward in our lives, our businesses towards our goals.
Hmm.
Exactly.
Yeah. I
We're in
like,
these structured systems.
yeah. Yeah.
Is there kind of a universal human preferable cadence, or I mean, obviously you have to adjust that,
Hmm.
there's only certain things we can change,
Mhm.
Yeah.
especially if you're in a job that determines your hours for you. So yeah, is there a universal sort of human preferred cadence, or does it differ among people, and how do you kind of work with the variety of schedules that you're presented with?
I doubt universal, but I think universally, like there are, different people need different sleep amounts, different
Hmm.
activity amounts, and we don't have a mechanism for addressing that. I know some, when you look at the healthcare industry, perhaps there would be, less challenges if, medical staff didn't have to work as many hours as they worked.
Yeah, you don't
Yet
say.
some may be really good at a 12-hour shift. So it's how do we start looking at the job? And I really like the experimentation that's happening with like 4-hour work weeks, shorter days, hybrid, remote, and in-person work. And I think those conversations and those tests that are happening, the more research that can be done, that can publish results that say this is better for health and wellness outcomes and even retention and profitability for companies, that we start to get this. I have a commercial landscape company that is in the region, called Natural Designs. They are a certified B Corp and a landscape company. And one of the things that the founders had thought with this is, if we pay our workers enough to not need a second job at home, they can spend more time with their children. And so this is typically a low wage industry, but they are treating their workers with dignity, paying them a livable wage, and sending them home in a good mental state to take care of their children, which gets them to bed. And guess what? Workers' comp insurance goes down because you have less
Hmm.
injuries because they didn't have to work a late shift at night to make ends
Hmm.
meet. So there really is ways of, like, at all levels of the spectrum, from high pressure corporate professional to wage work, manual labor, of ways of treating people with dignity that gives them the time to be more natural.
Yeah, I really hope that this becomes, more ubiquitous with companies of all sizes, because I mean, you got to think, and I'm sure there's data on this now, lots of data. The healthier that your employees are, that's going to pay in lots of different ways towards the profitability of the company, turnover, right?
Yeah.
Training new people, and workers' comp, like you said, and health insurance costs, and all these factors. It just would benefit any company to have healthier, happier employees. I would think.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
that focus on wellness before repair. How do we not go into an emergent state? How do we stay healthy? How do we plan for that long term? So the decisions we make today, we don't pay for later.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I like that. I feel like it promotes more transparency too, recognizing that there's different rhythms, especially, and I want to reference too, Vinny, your work with biorhythms and also lunar effects on humans and behavior and working patterns. But I feel like there's more transparency when there's an open dialogue and respect, such as the company that you're referencing, because I remember being in corporate in leadership positions. There was a feeling, a need to be secretive about your personal life because it would be detrimental to your position potentially if you're having to leave at a certain time, let's say like to pick up your children because that's on a different system than corporate life. And as we know, like you can get billed for picking up your kids late, right, in the evening, and it turns into like aftercare. So like there was just like a constant rushing and a secrecy, instead of respecting and there being a dialogue and a healthy like dialing back the stress, because we know internalizing stress and putting on that like front and mask for so long is just very depleting of anybody. Going back to that, like, wanting to treat the root cause of health versus having to put them into healthcare. But tell us a little bit, before we get a little bit deeper in a conversation about your understanding and how you became interested in the moon's effects on us.
Yeah, so it kind of all comes together. I did work in corporate early on in my career, and then started a consultancy, and a lot of this started in 2010. I was doing a lot of political campaign work and small business website work, and um, you know, not living in synchronicity with my own life and not living a true transparency, because I was hiding different aspects of myself or hadn't been able to explore them yet. And
Yeah.
I ended up in July of 2010 in the hospital with a panic attack.
Yeah.
And I had never suffered from anxiety before, and I had a short one a couple weeks earlier than that, but I was on my way to the office, and so I got to the office and it never got triggered. The next time, a week later or so, it happened, and I was on my way downtown for a luncheon, and I couldn't stop it. And I ended up, I found it happened to be an ambulance down on the water by the river walk. And I walked up to them. I was like, I don't feel well. And I had like 170 pulse. And,
Oh, wow.
they took me to Tampa General, and, they verified I wasn't having a heart attack, and it was a panic attack. And I spent the night there. But this was 2010. And we were just getting Wi-Fi at the hospital. So I literally was updating client websites from the hospital after having a panic attack. and this is the work ethic that you've built up.
Right.
And it was around that same time I read, I think, the 4 Hour Work Week, and started getting into some more things about life design. So I think those were the earliest seeds. And it was about a year and a half after that I was inspired to write a book on the changing of corporate systems and whatnot. It kind of sent on that journey. And I started exercising. I started running. I didn't meditate yet. I'd gotten a meditation from a friend, and occasionally would do that. And then at some point I found Headspace as an app, and the streak system of apps got me into it.
Yeah.
And so by 2014, 15, I was meditating pretty consistently. By 2015, I was in a journalism class, because I was finishing my undergrad in the last decade. And that journalism class made us do a journal, which I then combined with my meditation practice, which became a meditation and journaling practice, which was the same year that I read that book, Present Shock, which tapped into the lunar phases and this guy, Mark Felipe. and his work on biochemical rhythms associated impact of lunar phases, and how different neurotransmitters are in flux or in are higher during different weeks of the lunar cycle. So, during the new moon, the I can never pronounce these,
That's
but
okay.
like,
We say everything
yeah,
wrong.
yeah. So the first quarter week is serotonin. That one's easy.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
During the full moon week, it's dopamine, and we all know dopamine is kind of the party energy thing. And so,
Mhm.
what Rushkoff, the author of the book, had put in there was he started planning his writing around this. And so, week one, you are, low focus, high energy. So it's really good for booking meetings and conversations that week because, oh, I can't focus on anything real strongly, but
Mhm.
I'm fluttering out like a bean. I got the energy. So that's a great time.
Yeah.
Like, go to a coffee shop, have a meeting, have a conversation. Whereas the next week is your first quarter week. This is when the moon is waxing and you're getting that light energy. And so that one is looking at the wrong one here. That one is high focus and high energy. So this is a good week to lock yourself in a room and write. And get, if you want to be in a flow state, that's the week to focus on something because you really can get that log moved. Whereas the next week is your full moon week. It's low energy, low focus because you've just had this strong week. And so
Mhm.
you go into that week, and that's your editing week. You're like, okay, I've got tasks to do. I can focus on some things. Let me move around from one thing to another and have some flexibility. And then the last quarter week is low focus and is high focus and low energy. This is the week you do your bookkeeping. This is the week you
Okay.
do your accounting, or you update your mangled website or whatever it is.
Yeah.
That's that thing, like, you need high focus, but it can't be high energy.
Mhm.
So you're not going to be so it's really fun to do that. And I looked at it from this way, whether it's how much the neurotransmitters, how much it impacts you or not. If you can build your structure around something and believe it, it's kind of like, everybody is, so many people do New Year's resolutions or a word of the year
Right.
on New Year's Eve, and because we all do it. We all
Mhm.
focus on it. And I'm like,
Mhm.
you know what? I'm just going to do this every week instead of once a year. And so
Mhm.
each week I have a thing to focus on and to try to go, okay, well, this week I'm going to do this. And it doesn't work for everything, because you can't, some meetings are going to happen a week that they're going to happen. And
Yeah.
so you still have to adapt to that. But it's nice to put the big objects that you need to do in the weeks that you can focus on them better.
I like how it structures too very easily, like internal and external energy, and allowing for there to be ebbs and flow of energy and honoring that. Not necessarily that you need to follow to it strictly, but it's so anti what we know, especially as Americans, is just like rat race, like you're on all the time, high energy, high productivity. I know, like most people I work with, it's like, how can I be high, high, high all the time and all the things? Um,
Yes.
and it's just, there we just don't allow ourselves enough of that. Like, hey, this is like an introspective week for me. I'm just not gonna talk to anybody for the next couple of days.
It's
Hmm.
a recipe for burnout and low productivity at the end of the
Right.
day.
It's
Yeah.
like that rubber band snap,
Yeah, and
so
I have it everywhere. It's on my Google Calendar, it's on my phone as a widget. I have these cards next to my meditation space, so I kind of keep myself in that mindset of, this is the week to do this. This is the week,
mhm.
so you have kind of that distance separation. And so, yeah, I've been doing that since 2015 or so. And so it's really become a very, regiment or regular practice for me. And I try to talk about it and share it with other people as well, to kind of look at things a little differently.
I like that. I wish more. I mean, I'm probably going to try to consider adding a lot of that into, now that I've met you, I think that's something I would like to adopt more of a focus into. Like I was saying, like women, we're always tuned to our cycles. So always like, I'm going to be very high energy. That doesn't always match up with the lunar cycle, but um, you know,
Yeah.
a lot of times it does. But really just putting more voice and context around that, I think in conversation as we work professionally, I think could I mean, I would like that type of talk to be what spreads like a wildfire versus, being the best because you're on all the time.
Yeah. And that's the work I'm doing in personal futures kind of overlays with that. It says a lot of people, I've used the analogy, two analogies with it. Steve Jobs gave a famous speech about connecting the dots looking backwards. And what foresight does, whether it's corporate industrial foresight for sectors of the economy, or it's personal foresight futures for yourself, is allowing you to see and scan the horizon of what's in your life and around your life. And so you can't see all the steps going forward, but maybe it can give you a little bit more confident in choosing between two steps, because part of the process is going a lot of, well, there's this or this. All right, if you choose this, what comes next? Oh, you've got a new two option. We call it the implications wheel in futures. And so going through that exercise helps you kind of look at all the potential dots. So as different options come at you in your life, you've already scenarioed it. You've gone, oh, wait a second, I thought about this. Yeah, I could take that detour because it leads back to where my long-term vision anyway. And so the other analogy is taking, we can do vision boarding and put it on a vision board and manifest it. But if you can start what we call backcasting from it and overlaying different time horizons, you go, wait a second. When do I really want the camper van to travel around the country? Do I want it in the next 5 years, or is that really 10 years out? And what do I need to do to get there? So that those paths become more tangible.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if it kind of helps prevent getting into that analysis paralysis mode too, because you've already analyzed it in a structured way and then kind of given yourself permission to just step away from it instead of just constantly running over all the possible,
Absolutely. And it depends on what horizon. We use this 3 horizons model of like the immediate, like next 18 months to 3 years, depending on the individual. And then there's that second horizon, like, okay, how do you stay on target during the next 3 to 7 years? And then there's that horizon 3, okay, that's 7, 10. Somebody I just did recently was 13 years out, because that's when they turn 60 and their kids will be leaving the house. And putting it on there, it's kind of that thing, like why a lot of people journal. It's if you put it in writing, your brain can let it go. Whereas if you don't put it in writing, you're thinking about it. And so, on my third horizon is a PhD program in my, like I said, I'll be in my mid 50s at that point. I would like to be exploring PhD programs. So it's in writing. I've put it out there as a vision, but I don't have to detail it. It is the details of that are not important today. But it's out there in my plan and manifestation type of scenario. And so being able to do that and just, oh, it's over here. And just, I feel better about it.
Yeah, I love that you said that too. That's one lesson that I'm constantly having to relearn is, if you write this down, then it doesn't have to swirl around in here anymore.
Yeah. And I keep a journal, a handwritten journal, which is like my after meditation thing. And then I use Evernote. It is the one app I probably couldn't live without. It is like the elephant icon that they use on the app. Like it is my brain, my memory.
Okay. Good to know.
So you work with you work with it in a sense to like that, like if you write it down, it's kind of like programming it, but like letting it go. Like it goes to a level of your subconsciousness that you're not having to have in the forefront while you're doing all the steps.
Yes. Yeah. And like I said, with it saved digitally, I can find it.
Yeah. Do you go back and listen?
Yeah. So if it's saved digitally, I don't know what that was. If it's saved digitally, like the stuff that I read that is work or professional or life related, that goes into Evernote so I can find it, because you get 5 years from now, like, wait, I had an idea and I can find it in there. Whereas my journal, my handwritten journal is more life, emotion, feelings throughout things, which I have gone back to those in times that are challenging. I find finding a previously challenging part of my life that I wrote about and reading it 5 years later and going, oh yeah, we've been through things like this before.
And we can do it again.
Exactly. It allows me to,
And you've really come a long way, right? Like you're probably
Yes.
light years away from the mindset of that time. So
Yeah. I had a guru, for lack of a better word, because I walked into a room and he was there, and but his starting discussion was, he wanted a book as a child at a flea market or market or something like that, and his parents were like, no, you can't have it, but he finally like got them to do it. And what he realized, what he asks now, when you say you want something in your life, um do you want to have it, or what if you never wanted to have it at all? Or am I messing that up now? Oh, the fact that, later on in life, it didn't matter. And so how can you get to that letting go of this thing that you want now in the same way you're not going to care about it 10 years from now? And so how can you bring that mindset to, something material or a situation that you're in now and go, what if I just didn't want this thing? Because I'm not going to want it in 5 years. And so being able to kind of sit with that a little bit was an interesting.
That's so interesting. You stumbled upon a guru. You just
Yeah,
walked into a room.
I was at a conscious. I
that's how it happens in the movies, right?
It
Right.
does. When the student is ready, the master appears.
Right.
I had started the Conscious Capitalism Florida chapter, and we were promoting stakeholder orientated businesses, and I went to their national conference as a chapter leader. And the last session I was going to do it because I literally like surgically went in for 48 hours to Chicago because I was on a super tight budget, stayed at a Motel 6, and I was supposed to go to something about managing priorities or emails. Like, I don't know, it was super technical, and I was like, I don't want to do that. And I looked at the schedule that was posted, and there was like alternate realities with Dr. Rao. And I'm like,
oh my gosh.
okay. And so I walk into this, and Dr. Rao is, he's got one of the highest watched TED Talks on happiness that was never recorded as a TED Talk. It's one of the very few non-TED Talk videos that's on the TED website. And he used to offer this course at NYU and the London Business School called Creativity and Personal Mastery. And he rolled it from a college course that was part of the business and honors school into his own institute and program. And so he did these a couple times a year. He would do these like 3 weekends, 1 weekend a month for 3 months. And he had an assistant that was living in Tampa at the time. And we met for coffee and lunch and a long walk on Bayshore Boulevard. And she offered me an invitation, and he extended a gift invitation for me to attend his program in Glen Cove on Long Island. And so I had a sponsor at the time that had sponsored some work in B Corps that I was doing, and I was able, like, the alignment came that I could afford the hotel and the airfare 3 months in a row. The course was gifted to me by Dr. Rao, and I got to go through this amazing course on creativity and personal mastery and like changing your perspective and reality through imagining and envisioning. And like I said, that group in different ways and forms has been with me since 2016. So yeah, I literally walked into a classroom at the last day of the conference, had no idea what I was walking into, and it was just this amazing gift and journey.
Cool. You're living like a sci-fi movie right now. It's like, when I was talking to Emily about you the other day in our workout, she's like, so he's basically like choose your own adventure. And
those are my favorite books.
Oh, that's, yeah. When you were talking about the futures
with a plural. Yeah. And she's like, do you mean like choose your own adventure? And I'm like, sort of. Yeah.
Kind
but
of.
That's neat. You kind of are living that, like you're actualizing your goals, very much supported by these synchronicities. Like do you recognize them as synchronicities or coincidences that help you?
Synchronicity. And I can tell, that's one of the ways I know my path is correct, is if things are just happening a certain way, and different people come into your life at the right time. Or, I had a partner recently that I was having a panic attack day, and I was driving on Dale Mabry in Tampa. And now we have been in each other's lives for nearly 30 years. On and off. She's my comet partner. I last saw her on my birthday, and we'd been trying to like plan something together, and it just wasn't happening. I called her because I was like, I need to talk to somebody. Yeah. And she happened to be at the Michaels parking lot. and waiting to go inside to pick up some frames that she had done. And I was 6 minutes south of her. And so I met her in the parking lot, gave her a hug. We went into the store together to pick up her stuff, and we sat in the car and talked for an hour. And like, the chances, she lives in Spring Hill now, and we hadn't gotten together since my birthday when she came. Like, the chances of her being there were like limited, but I was like, you know what? The universe just winked at me. Like, I was in the right place at the right time, and I got a hug from somebody I love dearly, that understood me from when I was in high school. So
Yeah, what a
yeah,
blessing too, like the timing and that. I mean, to have that support, and Down Mabry will give, like, me on the most peaceful day almost an anxiety attack.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow, yeah. And so you do recognize synchronicities as something that affirms that you're on your life path. And what indicates for you that you're off path?
Stress, internal angst, things not going well. Like, I feel like I'm pushing against the path instead of going with it. I really like the ideas of Taoism, and this kind of having the flow, Bruce Lee and his thing, be the water. The water can be hard, it can be forceful, but it also fills the container. And so, those are kind of the things. And, right now I'm coming out of this master's program. I'm, doing all these new things, and I'm going, okay, there's a lot in flux. And I'm going, okay, where is my path? How is this forming to me? And so, yeah.
Yeah, it's really neat knowing you and meeting you in this process. You, to me, seem like a very on path person. Like, you very much light up with what you're talking about, and you just have this vast toolbox of life experiences, wisdom, and knowledge that I think, I don't think we'd have the time today to go into depth in all of the ways that you've gotten to where you are today and how you're working. But that's a very, like, would you say when you're in that on path state, you're more magnetic to like opportunities and people find you and
Yes, absolutely. Because I think, we attract the energy we put out.
Mhm.
And when you're going through phases where you're down on yourself, you end up attracting problems. And I think a big part of it too, the choose your own adventure, besides those being just amazing childhood stories. I remember reading those. They were great. Because that futurist thing is the idea that there isn't a future. And as a futurist, we don't predict the future. We
Yeah.
help you navigate the present, because there's multiple futures depending on the decisions you make. But a part of my choose your own adventure life has been, I was raised by a middle-class family on Long Island. I have come from a very privileged, working, but middle-class family. My father was born in 1933 and part of the silent generation, very frugal, worked hard his whole life, and provided my mother and father provided plenty of space for me to make mistakes. I have, two amazing uncles that have been mentors in my life, because my father suffered from a lot of mental disabilities and challenges from bipolar and paranoia. And they filled a role when I was in my teen years that my father couldn't do. But my father was amazing when I was, in my childhood years. He was super active there. And so I've had these mentors of family and friends and colleagues that have supported me. And like I said, I've made many financial mistakes. I've, lived as frugal a life as I could, while I was writing these books and going to school. So yeah, it's part of why I am now trying to advocate so much for other communities and whatnot, is because of the fact that I have this ability, that I can do that, and really speak up, because I've had this really kind of long journey from that panic attack in 2010 to being, out publicly as polyamorous, as pansexual. These are things that were not on my lips in 2010, which happened to be the same year I read a book about polyamory. So that's kind of started that journey. Yeah, there's so much that happened in 2010. And so that's the kind of privileged background that I've come from, that I'm like, I need to use that and speak up for other people that can't, because they might be fired from their job, for any one of those things. So yeah.
Do you think that the panic attacks kind of had to do with like suppressing that, or feeling like you had to suppress that?
Yeah, back then, yes. And I also discovered in 2019, a local chiropractor, Dr. Bach, diagnosed me with a hiatal hernia, which Western medicine never even looked for or at. And actually, he just adjusted me today for it because we think I might have aggravated that again recently. And that is, so what it would take what was normally just anxiety because things are stressful, and the underlying, I don't know if you know, a hiatal hernia is when your stomach is partially through your diaphragm of your abdomen. So there was this underlying physical trauma that would take an anxiety come on and tip the apple cart and make it a panic attack. So it's a little bit of both. It's not being in sync, which led to me not being healthy at the time, which aggravated the hernia, which causes the panic attack. So it's kind of all this like.
I had no
constellation.
idea. Okay, like true story. I in college had a repair of a hiatal and an inguinal hernia. I think that hiatal was discovered because of the inguinal, but I didn't know that that was related. Like that being into that space could cause anxiety or like a panic attack, or it just feels wrong in your body, probably like restrictive or strangling.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was my spouse, my wife, that really discovered it, because in 2019 my father was in the hospital as he was heading into decline with dementia and whatnot, and I had to drive to see him in the hospital, and I had 2 panic attacks in 3 days. One to the point I had to stop and call an Uber to go the rest of the way. Like, it was ridiculous. And she's like, "You don't have normal anxiety. There's something under this." And so she took me to Dr. Bach, and he did his applied kinesiology and adjusted me. And like I said,
That's
so for me,
amazing.
because for the first 3 years of our relationship, or 2 years of our relationship at that point, like, I was very cognizant, like, if somebody put their hand in the middle of my chest, I would move it. Like, that was not comfortable. There was something under there.
Like a pressure, like
Yeah,
restriction,
it was this trauma of my stomach and diaphragm not meeting
Oh my
correctly.
gosh.
And so
Yeah.
that's right where your heart is, right where your energy is, your shock, all of this stuff
All
is right
that.
there.
Yeah.
And so that trauma underneath was like just this switch to do it. Because after we had the adjustment, I was able, because it mostly hit me while I was driving, because the seatbelt is here, you're constrained, you can't do anything, so you get
Yeah.
fight, flight, and so it was a bad mix of scenarios. Whereas, like, if I was home, I could lay on the couch. But, like, there's other things you could do that you can't do in the car.
Oh my gosh. And that was such a pivotal moment. And it's interesting that gave you somehow, like, in that moment of like fear, it gave you visibility to very big pieces of your life today.
Yeah.
So supporting the polyamorous community, and your own awareness about yourself. And I know you're a very big supporter of your family and the type of lifestyle that you are living, and supporting others, because I imagine there's a lot of like you said, people can get fired.
Yeah.
So how is that like? I know that I'm a follower of yours on LinkedIn, so I know you put that out in the forefront too.
Yeah. That's been an uncovering over years, and I've been involved in the Tampa, St. Pete area in a few non-monogamy polyamorous community groups. So, for a long time, when I lived in downtown Tampa, I planned a monthly meetup at Rock the Park, which was the downtown partnerships. They had an event with free music at the park. And so we had a polyamory meetup at the park so that we can meet
Oh,
other
cool.
people and be out there and bring friends that were allies, because a lot of it, when you come out, your friends are like, "You're just greedy," or "You want your cake and eat it too." And so normalizing that and going, "No, there's different ways of living a life." So it started with that. I went to a conference in Atlanta in 2018, and there was an organization that put it on called the Relationship Equality Foundation, and they were working to bring this kind of to the forefront. Unfortunately, I don't know why, probably COVID, they have ceased to operate. But during COVID, another organization based out of San Francisco called Open, the Organization for Polyamory and Ethical Non-Monogamy, was created. And I've recently started, like, I'm part of their Discord now and kind of communicate, like, trying to get involved with that, because if their mission and kind of focus is elevating awareness and then creating support groups for people practicing. And then also their third kind of thing, is to work on workplace protections. Because a
Yeah.
big part of it is people afraid that their employers going to fire them, or they're not going to be treated the same way, or especially when it comes to divorces and stuff, that an ex-spouse is going to use that potentially against them as well, as another big aspect.
Wow.
That there's no protections if you're non-monogamous and your spouse wants to, cause problems in child custody issues. So there's a whole bunch of places. And, while I love the community building we're building here, and, the fact that we have, when I had a panic attack, I had a friend that was able to come over, and hang out with me and spend time because my wife is traveling this week, or when I moved my apartment, oh, I need this, I need that. And so we actually having a community together is really great. But from my aspect of being able to be very public about it, I'm moving towards, wanting to get involved with the advocacy part, and at least, especially in Florida, starting at the workplace level to build
Yeah.
in protections.
Yeah, that sounds really necessary because I can understand there's a lot of, well, on several levels, there's just not being understood. Friend groups, family groups, maybe like, you know, misappropriating or like, wanting to fix, find a solution or like villainizing, at the same time. And then you think about legal rights, medical rights, all of that type of thing being folded in on top of having the normal stressors of just living and being successful and having your goals and desires. As you're talking about future planning, like you have a whole other aspect to consider. So, well, like kudos to you for tapping in and supporting so many people that might not be, very recognized. And I love that, like having that
Thanks.
network. Yeah, that's really cool. So I was thinking if you're open to it, we could do, as we normally do on the conscious collaboration, we could do an I Ching reading, future planning, I Ching reading kind of are, I feel, very similar. Again, it's not fortune telling, but I think it might give us a good read and focus into what maybe our listeners are experiencing. And then we can guide our conversation from there and see how we can best show up, and having you collaborate with us today. Because you just bring so much to the table, but there's so much going on in the world. And as we talk about the visionaries and the thought leaders, change makers and entrepreneurs, it's, there's a myriad of things that our listeners are and we are facing. Let's see what the current energy is, and no matter when anyone's listening to us, we're recording on the full moon. So there's a lot of that full moon energy right now. And Mercury in retrograde for the people that follow into that. So we'll see what is the energy of our collective. And there we go. It's funny because I have a lot of international friends and we share a lot of chats on Instagram and so on and so forth. And so they'll share with me like how they're feeling. And it's so neat, like across, the pond, we'll be sharing like, yeah, I'm feeling like I was sharing with a friend, and this is just me. But I was sharing with a friend that we had on the podcast recently, lives over in Austria. And we were both saying like, oh, like I feel, I said I felt very low energy, like almost like to the point where I was just, I don't know, I just couldn't put anything down on paper or anything. But yet all these opportunities are flowing in. But my American mind wanted me to like check all these things off the boxes, but all these things were just working out in my favor and happening and clicking that I actually didn't need to do any of that, like checking off the boxes. And it was the same experience for her. The collective energy right now is similar to that. It's endurance. So the collective energy being endurance, it tells a story of thunder above and wind below. And I love this card. I don't know if you guys can see this, but it looks like a group of people putting their minds together. And
it's an actual photo of the weather, what the weather's been during the
Yes, your
entire
weather.
recording of this podcast.
Yeah. Emily's in a vortex of storms right now. But I also see like people huddled together in some way.
Yes, no, I do see that.
Endurance. And so these colors in feng shui, the dark blue and the black and the deep colors and like that water flow feeling is very much life journey vibes. So this is, to me, giving me the impression of endurance, having to do with a grouping of others, like-minded people putting their minds together. And Vinny, I don't know if we were talking a conscious collaboration, if you will.
Yeah.
Yeah. But Vinny, I don't know if we were talking about it on or in our pre-chat or on the podcast recording itself, but you were talking about how much you love the energy of water and flow. And was that in the podcast episode itself?
A little bit in the episode. And I think, I'm an Aquarius is my sign. So
Me too.
there's a little bit of a water thing there. I mean, I know it's an air
Yeah.
element, but
The water pouring. Yeah.
yeah. And I think that age that we're in now, the age of
Yeah.
Aquarius is, I think, this idea that, I'm looking at data and information and consciousness kind of coming together as we become more connected than that. This many people have never been disconnected before, and we have a lot of problems because it's this new energy, or new phase of evolution. But I'm really optimistic about the long-term trajectory.
Yeah, me too. As we talk about the age of Aquarius, and I do feel like there's systemically a lot of changes and shifts that are happening in societies. This energy in the I Ching, while it has that stormy vibe and the like the aspect of the colors of the deep dark ocean and that kind of flow feel, it's actually there is some wind in there, so it does have that air aspect to it, but it has a lot of that Age of Aquarius vibes to me. So I agree.
Yeah.
Thunder above and wind below. And then the future energy of what we can share is going to tell us the energy of increase. So this is really neat. So everybody out there listening, I'm going to just talk a little bit and we're going to flow in conversation. And Vinny had an opportunity to do an I Ching reading with me at one point. So this is not new to him. So let's see. And Vinny, you can kind of use your intuition to help guide us and interject. So the energy of endurance is cultivated when determination is coupled with flexibility. Talks about long distance runners must adapt to changing conditions while maintaining a strong sense of purpose. It talks about true endurance is not based on rigidity because endurance implies flexibility, not being locked into position. Only by adapting to change can we stay in the race. And only by deepening our sense of purpose can we call forth the strength to win it. I think that's like very much Vinny energy as you're talking about, helping others actualize their goals and to plan out the steps.
Right. It reminds me of how you've been talking about, you create a structure so that water has a container in which to flow, and it's not just like flowing out everywhere uncontrolled. So there is structure, but it's not rigid.
Absolutely. And I think, cultivation is a word I use often. And I think what this futures process allows people to do is kind of have that flexibility. One segment I have not had experience with yet, but one of my classmates in the program was pretty long career military guy, and he was in the foresight program because he's applying that to his skill sets, but he was like, you may want to look at doing this for veterans or people coming out of the military. In kind of in his words, he said there's a lot of planning in their first steps but not a lot of flexibility. And so I've got a few veteran friends here that I've been talking to that have organizations, and so I haven't done any yet. But that is an area where I'd like to at least experiment and try and see, can I provide value? Because I'm not a veteran myself. And so there's a lot of like, well, how do we help ourselves, help each other? And so I'm treading cautiously there, but I really think there's some opportunities there to provide real value potentially to people to help them build in that flexibility that I think some friends that I have talked to and the people in my program, you come out and you've been so regimented for so long
Yeah.
that flexibility may be hard sometimes. And so
Yeah.
I'm really hopeful that that's an area that I get to kind of do some work in, because one of the most rewarding pro bono projects that I ever did is I used to do some pro bono communications and website work for Toys for Tots program for the Marines. And so again, I was,
Oh, yeah.
as a civilian, it was really nice to see the inner workings of that organization and how they do that. And to sort toys, like piles and piles of
Oh
toys,
my
and sorting them.
gosh.
It was great.
Oh my gosh, that sounds like my
Yeah.
worst nightmare, but I love that you did that. So in this energy that everyone is in endurance, shifting into increase, I just want to recognize that those listeners who may be, just really feeling into this energy of endurance and that needing and desiring that flexibility, every change line is changing, meaning from your highest self, or where what you decided, what you chose to set out on this path, all the way down to the core is changing. So when we go through such significant changes like that on every level, it can feel very uncomfortable or like angsty. When we were talking about that, your hernia experience and feeling constricted, and panic attack, I imagine that's the type of energy that could happen when you're changing on every level like that. So
Yeah.
I feel like you might be showing up at the exact right time, sharing the exact right stories for listeners tuning in to us today. It reminds us that restlessness defeats endurance. Scurrying about in circles can make you just only dizzy. You're not getting anything done. So really being able to not control, but to tame that inner frenzy,
Mhm.
can your soul's calling really shine? So really allowing that to be what's being shown to the world. So on every level, from template level design of your life to your interpersonal level with your family, friends, and colleagues, to your internal level of what you might be bringing and showing up to your meditations, is really significantly changing right here. It talks about what endures best is that which has been carefully cultivated. If you're craving too much too quickly, you may end up with nothing. Interesting. So, really, I just want to, before we jump into what the future, energy is, and again, this is not future telling, but giving you an idea of how to navigate what there is. And really, Vinny, I think in this energy of increase, what people may be shifting into, you might be called to offer a little bit of guidance. Although the I Ching does advise to avoid serious risk taking right now. Um, and I think that kind of goes along too with like what we hear in our like spiritual friend communities. Like, not a lot of people are doing anything too risky during Mercury in retrograde.
Yeah.
And that's not, I always tried, like Emily and I take that with a grain of salt. In our conversation, we're like, whatever, it doesn't affect me. But yet also it doesn't hurt to have that awareness to dot your I's and cross your T's.
Absolutely.
So as we're shifting into increase, it talks about substantial progress and increasing prosperity are exhilarating and good. So another theme is when we're going through that like angsty feeling and endurance and maybe like a little bit of anxiety because so much is changing. Oftentimes that feels like scary, like you might want to just give up at that time. It's like right before the period of increase, which is what I'm seeing here, right?
Absolutely. I find that, the same thing when we look at, whether it's at a macro level in society, or it's the environment, or your personal life, like it's darkest before the dawn. Is it the light at the end of the tunnel? Is it a train, or is it the end of the tunnel? Like, what's coming towards you? And
Yeah.
and I think that's definitely, I think, where we are now. I've got in this kind of spiritual kind of awakening and involvement over the last decade, like run into a lot of people that are like, we are the light seeker. Like the energy is growing and growing and growing. Because even the conversation we had today, like I probably wouldn't have felt comfortable having that. I wouldn't have
Yeah.
known how to have it 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Let alone being confident enough to share it and go, no, I believe these things. These impact my life. So as more and more of us share more and more, we'll reach some sort of escape velocity from the previous age.
Mm-hmm. It's how we find our people, right? Like but there is that like, a little, I think sometimes we misconstrue, a great opportunity around the corner. In our bodies, it feels like you said, like you're walking in a haunted house, but actually it's
Yeah.
like a huge blessing on the other side. It's not anything that's going to wreck you.
Yeah.
It talks about, so this prosperity that's right around the corner. As long as you go with the flow and keep the interests of others in mind, you're on the path to success. And again, it's referencing water, Vinny, your favorite. It said, like a river's white water rapids, periods of increase can be short in duration. It furthers when to ride the rapids now while the waves of opportunity are high. So I don't know. I'd have to reference back your lunar cycles and like how that, what's coming in the future and when that may, just things to look out for. It says leaderships in times of increasing opportunity involves commitment to the needs of cohorts or dependents. By remembering to lead is to serve, a leader strengthens their ability to bring about a lasting increase in prosperity. So I imagine, as you're helping and guiding and encouraging people in their futures planning in terms of like, the networking and the building of teams and leadership, that might come into play.
Yeah, I'm doing a lot with, it's interesting too, is because, I'm referring people or sending them on their way to find a financial advisor or to find a financial
Yeah.
um, coach or something like that, or to, hey, maybe you do want to talk to your therapist about this, or you need a realtor, or whatever it
Yeah.
is, like bringing people in. And I've been asked early on, like, are you a coach? And I was like, I don't have the stamina for that.
Mhm.
I think I believe I bring a different perspective to planning, because coaches can certainly help you plan for your future,
Mhm.
but I believe the tools, and what I've done is, as I'm taking our alums program that he created, I'm changing it, because there are life design things like the domain lives that I'm bringing into it. So I'm
Mhm.
really making it my own unique mix of foresight tools that are not in the coaching realm, and strategy realm, and tools from the life design realm, that might be a little bit better and more intuitive than the tools that were created, in the futures program, to really come up with something unique, and to do that. And my idea is, whether it's your spouse, best friend, or coach, it's up to you to hire or have an accountability partner to go
Mhm.
forward in your plan. I don't want to see you for another 18 months.
Yeah.
Like, I want you to join. We're going to build a community around this and let people share
Yeah.
their stories and do stuff. But it's kind of like, a strategic plan for a company or organization. Every 3 years, bringing in an outside person to go, I can ask you different things, is
So you're
not a
like
bad idea.
a part of like my board of directors, kind of, like someone I would check in with, or like like I would check in with my financial advisor. I would check in with you to make sure I'm on track.
Well, actually, that's a little bit, like I said, the community part that we're going to build is really for retention, to keep people in the community so they
Mm.
do come back eventually for something. But
Yeah.
really, your board, look at it this way: your board of directors is your
Yeah.
accountant, your financial
Yeah.
advisor, your therapist, your
Yeah.
doctor, your spouse, or your accountability partners. I
Yeah.
am the outside consultant that comes in, and I can
Ah.
come in 18 months, 3 years, whatever your horizons are, and go,
Uh-huh.
okay, talk to me. What's your board doing for you that you want to, how do you want to change things up and move things forward?
Ah. I
So
like
that's
that.
really, I think, how I look at it, is being able to be a touch point for somebody, far less frequently than you might call your financial advisor,
Okay.
for insights
So
or.
like when you were talking, I was like thinking a lot about like your like what's a map maker called? A stenographer? Is that what map makers are called? No, that's someone that types.
Cartographer.
That's the court. That's the
That's the
court
courtroom.
Yeah,
writers.
cartography.
Yeah.
Cartography. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like you're like the cartographer, um, that's working.
It's like are you smarter than a fifth grader question?
Right. I only know that because of the History Center. They used to have a cartography room, or they still do, and my friend works there for years, and so that's why it's in my head. I had it in
Good stuff.
I love it. It says when the times favor prosperity and when leadership is in the hands of the broad-minded, supreme good fortune is the result. You know, and Vinny, you can talk a little bit more about this, but as we talk about like, charting new paths and being called to do bigger things and what we never even knew were in existence before, as we talk about things changing systems and we're not looking to you working with you, a consultant like you is helping us to not put ourselves into a box or like a glass ceiling situation.
Absolutely. I recently, like last week, was inspired. I'm getting a tattoo. September 8th, I think. Anyway, I look back. I've had this mantra or life kind of vision for a since 2016. I had a coach actually that was doing some pro bono coaching for me because she was a supporter of conscious capitalism, Florida, and liked the work that I was doing. And so we were sitting having coffee, and she's like, "Stop. What you just said, say it again." And or she repeated it back to me because she was listening better than I could. And it is, "I see distant horizons clearly and work meticulously towards them." That has been on my resume header, my website, my profiles. Like, I see things that are far off, and I am able to keep working towards them, which is why I got inspired to write my first book in 2011, and this journey has not stopped, and hopefully will never stop, and we'll just keep getting bigger and more robust. But she had said at the time, make it your screensaver, put it on your wallpaper, like tattoo it on your arm. And I didn't do that. And I got inspired last week. I'm like, I'm getting it tattooed on my forearm. I
so that
out,
the line or a symbol of that?
Yeah, that line, that phrase, I think I'm going to get tattooed there.
I don't know the answer to this, but you should research what the spiritual significance of where you're placing your tattoo is.
Because I put it out to the world or put it out to social media. Hey, I have advice on where to put a tattoo that you want to be able to see. Because I have a dragon ankh symbol for my Chinese birth year on my back shoulder that I never get to see. And so I'm like, this phrase, I want to remember this phrase because recently I've forgotten it a bit.
Yes, I love that. That is so cool. So, Vinny, if there's anyone that's listening out here that's going through this period of like intense endurance and they are going through the biggest transformation of their life right now, and they're feeling that maybe constriction in their chest, like it feels like, anxiety, and they need to find a way to get that mapped down, and I think the way that you described it just now is so beautiful to be able to see that like in the horizon, that goal, the actualization in a way that they've not looked at it before, and plotting those touch points and steps. How does one find you? Like, how do you invite them into working into your system?
So I am on most social media as Vinny Tafuro, just Vinny with a Y and my name. My website is vinnytafuro.com. And so, those are the two primary ways of reaching. Like I said, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram are the primary ones I use. I'm on Twitter. We'll probably experiment with TikTok a little bit more as I do more of this kind of personal features talking and stuff to get things out there. But yeah, so my name, Vinny Tafuro, and vinnytafuro.com.
Vinny Tafuro, we loved having you here. Yeah, what do you say, Emily? Should we invite Vinny inside along with everyone else inside of the Conscious Collaboration Collective?
Duh.
So we'll invite you. I know you're a busy guy, but in case any questions come in from our listeners or if you're inspired to share anything, and certainly we'd love to have you back for a deeper conversation, a part 2, if you will, because I think there's a great need for what you're called to create here in this system. Those listening, thank you for joining us today. And we're going to open up our Facebook group to you. You can find us there. You can find Vinny's information in the description. We'll also share it inside of the group and all the social media channels. And thank you for showing up and listening. And Vinny, thank you so much for adding to the Conscious Collaboration today. And, And I very much enjoyed, thank you. It was such an honor to work with you in looking at my, planning out my futures, plural.
Well, thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Emily. I really appreciate being here. And thank you to everybody who listened too. I appreciate your heart space and time right now.
Time always flies with these great conversations.
It does. All right, guys. Well, I'll talk to you in 5.
Talk to you in 5. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Thank y'all so much for listening to our podcast. If you haven't yet, please be sure to subscribe, rate, review, and share with all your friends so they can join our circle of collaboration on this journey. You can find us on Instagram at Conscious Collaboration Podcast, on Spotify, iTunes, and Audible, to name a few. Please join us next time for another deep dive into how you can live life in more alignment, mind, body, and business. Send us your questions and comments in our DMs or email us at consciouscollaborationpodcast@gmail.com. See you in 5 minutes.